Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express, your favorite morning show. And now it's time for the political point. We're taking a look at what has been happening political. And joining me in studio to steer that conversation is Kevin Osido, who is a governance expert to my immediate left. Next to him is Professor George Wajakoya, who is also a professor in the governance issues. And last but not least is Kaikai Kisinga, who is a lawyer. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us. But before we get into that conversation, we're asking you on our big question to share your views on the suspension of Raila's swearing in. Share your views on the suspension of Raila's swearing in. You can always tweet me directly at Ashley Mazuri or at KTN News. The hashtag to use is Morning Express. Now I'll start with you, Kevin. Do you think Raila has finally succumbed to the pressure to withdraw the swearing in?
Actually, I do not know where that narrative around pressure is coming from. And probably, like we have seen in the past, it could be a media creation.
Yes.
But yes, of course, we have seen lots of people calling for dialogue, which is supposed to be constructive insofar as dealing with this precarious situation that has been occasioned by our political context, which arose from the disputed elections. So whether he succumbs to pressure, which I do not know, even as I sit here, I cannot be able to comment conclusively on whether there is pressure or not. But the bottom line is that Kenyans are desirous of a situation that will be able to make this country great again.
Yes. We
are looking for a solution that will be able to make each and every single Kenyan to be able to identify with this country, because as it is right now, really, millions of Kenyans feel that they are not part of this country, and another set of millions feel that, yes, we have it, it is ours, and there's nothing mutadu. Yeah. And those are kind of narratives which I think this context that we now have right now as a people is providing God's second chance to Kenyans to be able to deal with our issues. And you note that Raila's team has been presenting very serious concerns that are shared by a number of Kenyans. And how this is going to end, as we've said before, is really dependent on the two people. Of course, we are millions of Kenyans, but I think the biggest primary players and stakeholders in this is His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Yes. And how they are going to deal with this, in my view, is something that we are hoping is going to be one that will reunite this country and make Kenya great, and make each and every Kenyan identify with this wonderful country, and not to wake up every day thinking about what does the future hold for me. Because I think as it is right now, Ashley, many of us common citizens are really confused. And if you look at social media, for instance, last night and this morning, many of Raila Odinga followers are feeling disenfranchised, and they are feeling so much let down. Yes. And how this hope is going to, continuously get maintained again from the other side is a discussion which we need to keep following up. Yeah. But I still do not think there has been pressure. You note that Raila Odinga himself, the Right Honorable former Prime Minister, has come out and said Kenya is a sovereign state, and that there should be no interference. We are looking forward to listening to what the President has to say. And of course, friends of Kenya, like the diplomatic community, will continue getting involved in these processes. But I think that the ultimate objective has to be about Kenyans. Yeah. Sisi kama wana Kenya.
Professor, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm lost, because my friend has explained everything that I heard. But having said that, NASA has lost credibility, because this is the second time they have postponed. And thirdly, I would rather say that people are now tired of the Odinga and the Kenyatta family. Yeah. We have had this status quo for many years, and I'm sure that my friend Kissinger here and my friend here, from their birth right, from the time they were born, it has always been Kenyatta, Odinga, Odinga, Kenyatta. It's time for them to start moving away. I have no proper words or sympathy on Raila and Kenyatta, because we are just tired of the two families. The better they go. If one is going now, the other one should be prepared to hand over, so that we can have some people to come in and move this country forward.
Kai, do you share the same views?
I think we all know the genesis of where we are right now as a country, why we found ourselves in a situation that we are in, where the legal aspects have taken place, political aspects have taken place, but then there's some section of Kenyans who believe that they are not happy with what happened. Now, if you read the, so to answer your question, if you read the statement, or if you listen to the statement that Honorable Salem Dabadi.
Kai, I'm sorry, your mic has problems, but we will be getting back to you. I'll come back to Kevin. You said our country is divided at the moment. So how do we heal our country?
We must get to, in my view, the level of a dialogue. Of course, there has been calls of dialogue, but looking at what is it that is happening, what is the issue. And I'll repeat again that NASA, now NRM, has documented these issues in a much more favorable manner. We have had institutions of governance in this country, for instance, the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, that has done a survey on public offices and the fact that not so many Kenyans feel contented in the manner that we feel our public positions. We've just been talking about whether ethnicity or negative ethnicity, which one is it and which one is the best one, which one is not the right one. And so negative ethnicity is one of the other things that we must be thinking about, and how to ensure that there's so many of our different ethnic communities feel part and parcel of governance and political systems. And actually, again, there are lots of opportunities that accrue. And looking both at the national and the county levels, counties must also begin to come into the foray, the debate of how to unite this country. And semblances of whether different tribes or clans are going to be the ones holding power at the county level, and ignoring other people who are also part of these counties is going to be another issue that we need to address. So whether we are going to be looking at minorities in the counties and marginalized communities like the youth, people with different disabilities, women, you know. So how to be able to ensure that this country is united is a question that I think we have been through for a long time.
Yes.
But as Prof rightfully said, Kenya cannot just, regurgitate around two people. That is Uhuru Kenyatta family, Raila Odinga family. We must begin to also have a discussion around how do we move it to the other people so that each and everyone feels contented. But I think that for me as a Kenyan and engaging with different aspects of the politics and the leadership of this country, I feel that we have lots of opportunities to be able to move to the next level. But how we are going to do that is determined by what happened in 2007. It's really unfortunate that we failed to learn some very important questions. Agenda 4 issues, I think had we dealt with them at that point, so much so that by the time we were promulgating the Constitution in 2010, then we would have said that Kenya has learned her lessons and that there are things that we can be able to pick up for the sake of moving forward. But again, because we did not address those serious issues then, we find ourselves in 2017, 10 years down the line, still asking the same questions. So how we move forward again is dependent on His Excellency the President, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and of course the people who are around them. These hard stands and tough talk and chest thumping is not going to help this country at all.
Yes, it's not going to help this country at all. But as you said, we need dialogue. And at the moment, as much as we need to move on from the Railas and the Uhurus, the families, the two families, right now, the situation that we're in involves the two of them. And we are aware that President Uhuru Kenyatta is slamming any door of dialogue. What are your thoughts on this, Professor?
I thought it was kissing.
His mic is still being...
There is some kind of rhetoric in the republicanism, and I will talk of republicanism equating Uhuru into that fixation. Uhuru Kenyatta has come out and proclaimed a very vague statement, which ought not to have come from a head of state. You cannot just come out and say that I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm leaving that to Ruto in 2022. I mean, that is rhetoric. And I'm telling the president in the face that he has no moral authority to abdicate his role as a president of a country by getting involved into divisiveness. If a US president did that today, or let me say Pakistan Prime Minister, came out and said, I'm not talking, we leave it to the future, he'll be impeached for abdicating his role as a president. He is a president of the nation and a president of everyone. He just took an oath of affirmation the other day to restore justice, preserve justice, and look into the longevity of justice and the preservation of the Constitution. But having said that, the main problem that we have in this country is that constitution with 264 articles. It's just rhetoric. It's absurd. The US has got only 7 articles and 27 amendments. Given the fact that the US has been in existence for many, many years, given the fact that there are so many articles of incorporation in the Constitution that have been looked into and invalidated by the Supreme Court. But if the president comes out and says he's not talking to anybody, that means even myself, if I wanted to speak with him, though I've never met the man, I would simply give up and go somewhere. Yeah. Raila is not somebody just to be put under the table. Yeah. Raila is an enigma. Some of these people are in diapers when Raila was in jail. There is no part of Raila that has not been broken. He has been broken body-wise. His bones have been broken. His physical integrity has been broken, but his spirit has never been broken. And therefore, we cannot just come out and push this man away when we know exactly what happened to him during the Kenyatta regime, when we know what happened to him during the Moi regime, and we can't just holistically push him away. Uhuru needs Raila. Raila does not need Uhuru.
Okay, I'll start with that point there. Uhuru needs Raila, but Raila does not need Uhuru. Kaikai, your thoughts on this?
I think I've had issues with the mic,
yes.
But let me go back to your first question,
yes.
because I don't think that first question was answered.
Yes.
And we glossed over it. I think you asked whether Raila has given up or whether he has now bowed into pressure.
Yes.
And I was saying before my mic went off is that if you read the statement that came out yesterday from the former minister, Musalia Mudavadi, who is a core NASA principal, it was very detailed in terms of what NASA is thinking and in terms of why NASA at that time made the decision to postpone the election. Yeah. So he talked about 2 things. If you analyze it as a lawyer, 1 is the legal aspect, and number 2 is a political aspect. Now, NASA seems to have made a U-turn and decided not to go on with the swearing-in process, and they're saying that they've listened to people all over, both local and international. And remember that between that time and now, when they say they will swear Honorable Raila Odinga into office, there has been a lot of dialogue going on and advice going on from all over the world. Yes. So NASA now recognizes that it's important we can't go ahead with this swearing-in process because we've listened to other people and are against it. And as NASA, we are now retreating and we'll come back later and tell you when we think this will be done. So that's the first step of them recognizing and coming to reality that what NASA was trying to do is not selling very well with the rest of the public, yeah, or with the international donors or with the international support. So that's a good recognition that somebody is taking cognizance of the fact that what we are doing is not proper. Now, you also recall that there were a lot of legal opinion and advice that were channeled by the Attorney General. Mm-hmm. And one of the advice the Attorney General said that this is an illegality because we already have a sitting president in place. And if you go ahead with the swearing-in process, then it hinges on a criminal element, and that is the issues of treason. Yes. So I will not want to say that NASA is doing this because of the fear of treason, but the fact that they themselves are saying that they don't want to go ahead with this process and they will announce the future is a good thing for the country to stabilize. And I think my core panelists here have talked about the issues of stability in a country. Yes. We require it. Now, that's the first milestone that has happened. Now, what then I expect to happen next is discussions will go on within either NASA or within other frameworks where now people will have to agree on way forward. And I think when you heard the president saying yesterday, he came out very clearly saying that he does not want to involve himself in dialoguing on issues of elections. So already one political side is saying, look, my position is very clear. I'm not going to dialogue on political dialogue anymore because this is now out of my way. And he actually told them that whoever wants to dialogue can go ahead and dialogue with the Deputy President William Ruto. Yeah. So you can see therefore that it's going to be interesting to see how the political dynamics will evolve in a short period of time. But having said that, then we now need to understand that where are we as Kenyans, because today, remember, the Supreme Court is making the judgment, yes, and the judgment is going to be detailed in terms of what they thought not to nullify the President Uhuru Kenyatta's election. Yeah. And that will also come with clarity to probably NASA, who felt that they were not happy with the Supreme Court decision. Yeah. So there will be some sort of clarity. So sometimes it's that time is the best medicine. Time heals. And over time, all these political dynamics and political challenges that we are facing should be solved. But I agree with my panelists when they all say that there's need for dialogue. I think it's important to have dialogue. The only thing is that dialogue must be structured in a way that it's not about Raila, it's not about His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, it's about Kenyans. What do we really want as Kenyans out of this? Remember, we have a legal framework, we have a constitution, we have all enabling laws that really we fought very hard. And I heard my panelists talking about the efforts that some of these politicians have done in terms of changing the landscape, the political landscape, and changing the legal landscape in this country. So we have a good framework in terms of what we can anchor ourselves on and say, my colleague talked about Agenda 4, and I appreciate that because I took a very active role in Agenda 4 commissions. And so we want to see what has gone wrong. Is it that the system is bad, or is it that we have political intolerance in this country? Is it that some of us must feel that we must take a certain direction or not? So I think it's a good thing that that the things are changing the way they are. It's a good thing that we have a leader in place, and it's a good thing that there has to be sanity and order in this country, and the rule of law must be adhered to.
So then do you agree with Professor when he says, or do you share the same views when he says Uhuru needs Raila, but Raila does not need Uhuru?
No, I don't think I share that view. For me, it's not about individuals. For me, it's not about Uhuru. For me, it's not about Raila. For me, it's about Kenyans.
Yes.
So it's not about individuals. Let's not reduce the debate to individuals. This country is not for 2 individuals. This country is for 41+ million Kenyans. And this country has taken a certain direction in the last 1 month by 19.6 million people being given an opportunity to participate in an electoral process to choose their leaders. So let's not reduce the whole concept about 2 individuals. It's not, Kenya is bigger than the 2 individuals, as a matter of fact. So we should not be thinking about the Uhuru family being in power, the Odinga's family being in power for many years. No, it's just that they have happened to be in that position, in that leadership for a very long period of time. We want to see a situation whereby we are looking at ourselves as a Kenyan sovereignty, as a Kenyan people, as people who believe in our own course of action. So therefore, it's not about individuals, it's about Kenyans as a population.
All right, Kevin, you're nodding your head. Do you share the same views?
About
the Uhuru needs Raila, Raila needs, does it not need...
I was actually agreeing with Prof.
Yes.
And disagreeing with my friend Kissinger. Because the situation we have right now is a political situation. It is not going to be sorted out legally in the corridors of justice, by constitution and all that. Yeah. We need a framework that will be able to, first and foremost, recognize that we are here because of Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
Once we take that step, because remember, the good book says, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yes.
Even if we are going to have a structured, constructive dialogue, we must be able to generate a starting point. And we have seen in our country starting points being given different privileges. And the privilege will be, even if we have that dialogue, the debate will be around, Mr. President, can you give us negotiators?
Yes.
Right Honorable Prime Minister, can you give us negotiators? The team will not go to the millions of supporters. They will have to recognize that it is about these 2 people. Sababu pia Waswahili husema fahali wawili wakichapana ni nyasi ndio humia.
Yes.
It is no longer about is fahali wawili, not so many fahali. So yes, it is true. As it is right now, the president needs Raila Odinga much more than Raila Odinga needs him. But also note that anytime Raila Odinga calls for a demo, we see what happens in this country. And it is affecting huge, enormous interests at different levels, both the business-wise, politically, and the person who sits at the helm, honestly speaking, is His Excellency the President, and he sits at what is called the presidency. And every single Kenyan wants to see the presidency guaranteeing peace, security, and safety for our business, which has not been the case. And that is why each of them need each other, but the President needs His Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister much more. Because Raila has people, he will just say, Kesho, tuko na maandamano, and you will see thousands of people on the streets.
Yes.
These people who just rush there, you know, in a much more willingly speaking, yeah? So that then they are able to ensure that what the former Prime Minister says takes precedence in their own understanding and views.
Yeah.
And so it will really take the President much more steps than what he is talking right now to be able to engage with Raila. And that is why I believe with Prof that the President needs the former Prime Minister much more than, because of course we have also seen the Attorney General say we have a President in office. can we see that presidency now doing what Kenyans expect of a president?
Then what is the people's president, Professor?
Actually, looking back to the U.S. Constitution, and I'm sorry, I'm not whatever, I'm a lawyer, I'm a professor of law, not espionage. Looking back at the history of the people's assemblies and president, we shall find out that the United States government converged around the people of the United States. If we look at the UK, we shall also look at the UK in the following manner, that the United Kingdom has no written constitution. It has a Bill of Rights which are subject to judicial review. It has a Bill of Rights which is subject to the people's participatory level, right from the grassroots. That's why we have got town hall meetings in the UK whenever there is any legislation which is under the prerogative of the minister, of Her Majesty's minister, to do as Her Majesty may want through the will of the people, through the People's Assembly. They have to sit down, cogitate around what is being said, if it's in terms of matters affecting their fundamental issues. They have to debate from the People's Assembly at town hall meetings organized by the mayors, regardless of the circumstances. And if they see that that decision is going to impugn on them or to affect them, then they will go to the higher courts, in this case, the High Court in the UK, which will look at the matter through judicial review, whether there was an error, whether there was an ulterior motive, whether there was fairness, whether there was proportionality. And if none of that is missing, or is affirmed, then they can go to the House of Lords up to the EU before pre-exit. Britain exists, the EU. Similarly, if you look into the US, you see that the reason why there was American Revolution and the reason why there was an imminent war between the Americans and the French after the French Revolution, everything was determined around the self-rule, self-determination, people's participation, people's leadership in the participation. Unlike what it is in this country, where things come from the top to the periphery, or the top to the center to the periphery, where things come from top coming down. The People's Assembly ought to have been factored in this constitution. Of course it is, but it ought to have been given first prevalent, whereby the people decide from the grassroots level. And they go on. If you look at the history of the Americans, and we go into the history of the Commonwealth Anglo-Saxon wars, the whole fight was around the espionage. It was the king and the royalty. In French, it was the king and the royalty. In Prussia, it was the king and the royalty. In Austria, it was the king and the royalty. Until all that was put down and people came in to take over the power by the will of the people. Now, if you look at the constitution in this country, if you look at the constitution, it's pragmatically segmented. There is the phraseology of we, the people, which means that the constitution starts and ends at the preamble. Not the articles of incorporation or articles incorporating the constitution, which means that the people have a say on what's beneath them. And what is beneath them is that document which they have proclaimed. They can either do away with it, either legally or illegally. And then from the constitution, you come to the legislation. You come to legislative activities. Then you come to the judiciary, and you come to the executive. Therefore, people can decide. We need to have our assembly. We need to chart our way forward. But Kenyan lawyers are full of rhetoric. Let me sum it this way. They are very much inside the box. The majority of them, not all of them. They come up to look into the box and say, the law says. Whose law is that? Can you break it down and go upwards and find out whether it can fit in the ceiling? The law says. They can even quote. I've heard some lawyers quoting articles as if they went to Harvard. They became Rhodes scholars, or what have you. The answer is no. Let's look at the people's will in the preamble. Let's narrow it down. And now when we come to that, then the people can decide to do what they want to do. They can even take that constitution and put it aside. But then now, let us look at the regulations. Do those regulations fight the whims of the constitution? Do they fit in? Look at the Espionage Act in 1776, I think, in the UK. No, 1719 in the US. In the US, where people were treasoned for agitating being communist, for agitating against the state because the Americans were going into war with France, though the war did not come in following the French Revolution. What happened thereafter? Why has the courts come in and said, well, interpretation of the Constitution is just with the Supreme Court, but in Kenya everyone can interpret the Constitution in a way. So to sum up what you have just said, yes, the Raila's issue was going to bring history of its kind because there are so many violative constitutions that have been removed by military overthrow. There are so many constitutions that have been invalidated by the Supreme Court in the country. There are so many constitutions that have been invalidated in any other way.
Yes.
And Raila's format probably was also another way. So there's no God or prince of constitution who can come and say we are violating, in which case the Attorney General was wrong.
Yeah. All right, we want to go on a short break, but before we do that, let me sample some of your views. And Samuel N. Oruto says, we have spent a lot of time in politics. We need time for other issues. It is better if Raila can finish his plans once so that we can do other things instead of sticking on the same thing for so many days. Oliver Bill says, I wait for his direction, and when time comes for his exit for politics, we'll still press on in our quest for a better Kenya, inshallah. These are just some of your feedback. We want to take a short break here on Morning Express, but when we come back, what can we do as Kenyans to move on? Kenya is more than the two people, so what can we do? Don't go too far.